collaborated on pandemic issues. It was the bird flu, even during SARS. I think that there are probably three aspects. One is on the research and development aspect. Second is on health and safety protocols, cooperation in that area. I think we did a lot of that during the bird flu time, but I think we didn't follow up, and we actually had this zoonosis cooperation and so on. I think we need to revive that in a big way, because I think you know how you're going to manage this to prevent future pandemics is going to be crucial. And third is probably in the production, distribution, and sharing of the production of medical equipment, PPE, and eventually the therapeutic medicine and vaccine. The World Economic Forums mentioned about the alliance that's happening. World Bank is also part of that alliance to support the production of vaccine. And here I think maybe ASEAN as a group could also participate. It's about advanced market options to support the production of vaccine, but then to be able to get access to that in a fair and equitable way, in an affordable way. So I think coming up as ASEAN rather than as individual countries, that might be another way to cooperate.
Thank you, Ibu Maria. Ibu Armida, would you like to take on the questions about jobs recovery or unemployment issues, as well as the preparing the region for the future pandemic?
Yes, thank you very much, Pa Aladdin. Again, on the jobs, yeah. If we look at the data, certainly inequality has exacerbated the socio-economic impact from COVID-19, and those most impacted are, again, because of the lockdown or restricted mobility. Therefore, most impacted are the informal sector, the SMEs, including women, and those especially who reside in the urban area. Second, the sectors itself, the sectors of the economy. We see tourism hit hard, very hard, including the hospitality industry, such as restaurant, entertainment, and so on, certain services, travel industry, certain manufacturing, and these are that most hit hard. Whether they are temporary or permanent, we still have to wait and see. Whether the jobs will return to that particular sector or partially and so on. But on the other hand, some sectors are also thriving. We know certain sectors that rely a lot on this digital or digitalization of the sector transform itself quickly, or certain activity or certain business transform itself quickly, then they can mitigate the impact. Including we see thriving digital commerce, this very various online platform services and so on and so forth. But I think all of these cannot really fully compensate the jobs lost, because some are you can shift with a new modality, but some are quietly entirely new, and some are maybe temporarily impacted. So therefore, going forward, what kind of strategies? I think in again, all this discussion about how to transition to more rapid digitalization. That's one, and then how also to equip the players with the skill sets needed, and including the youth that are going to enter the job market. How many of our young generation are maybe a little bit, or not a little bit, very worried that they cannot get jobs on their graduation. So we need to prepare this towards the new opportunities of employment. And third is, of course, mitigate the impact of certain sector that would, at least, could direct the stimulus towards these very sectors. Second question is on how to prepare better for future pandemics of crisis. Again, in general, several several items that we have discussed before, which first is, again, opportunity to strengthen the social protection system, aligning with also the healthcare system. Yeah, that's one. Second, yeah, go back to basics. Yeah, we see all these basics. Yeah, when the countries they have good basics, they are better able to withstand this kind of crisis or pandemics. Basic infrastructure, social services, including the simple clean water, sanitation, and so on. And then again, the very important strategic issue of resiliency and sustainability, value chain, transport, again, of course, digital connectivity, and the scaling up of opportunity for this low carbon development. Again, within the overall, the broader framework, NDC, yeah, that country commit, the various sector, then you can, better direct the various sector towards low carbon development, or the more immediate one through stimulus packages. So with that, I hope that countries in the region can, do better to and better prepared, yeah, for any future pandemics and crisis. And last point is, I think this also provide ample opportunities for cooperation from best practice, lessons learned, or more concrete cooperation in certain areas that are already mentioned, yeah, in our discussion. Thank you. Over.
Okay, thank you so much, Ibu Armida. I think we're down to the last set of questions, and these are directed both for Ahmed and Jukli. For Ahmed, there is a question from Malaysia, and the question is, how do we ensure minimum disruption to supply chain connectivity during the pandemic? And for Juk, a question from Australia, and this is about how ASEAN governments should best incentivize private investment in a post-pandemic world. And a common question to both of you is about the issue on financing. The question is how to better mobilize private capital in order to support the post-pandemic recovery. If you can take these two questions briefly. Thank you.
Would you like me to go first?
Yeah, please, Ahmed.
Okay, great. So let me first talk about supply chains, and then I'll talk about private capital. So COVID-19 has clearly had a huge impact on regional and global supply chains and on value chains. And there's no question governments, companies, people will need to adapt. Perhaps to be a bit specific in response, I'll take not the idea of supply chains generally, but let me take a particularly pertinent and relevant area. So let me focus on medical equipment supply as an example. I think we'll all acknowledge that the need to increase national PPE production, but also the need to distribute it and to improve our logistics capacity and regional cooperation in this sector is incredibly important. So what would we need to do in this specific area? We'll need to provide funding and assistance to increase investment for PPE production. We would need to find ways to incentivize public-private partnerships. We need to find ways to improve logistics so that PPE supplies are directed to those in critical need, including healthcare workers, and so that there's surge capacity that can be delivered when and as needed in regions that are confronting near-term problems. And we're also going to need to design policies that allow the movement of experienced, critical, and important and experienced personnel. So how would we do this? Perhaps I can offer some thoughts, although these will certainly not be comprehensive, but some illustrative thoughts. We're going to need to find mechanisms for countries to guarantee advance payments. We're going to need regional cooperation mechanisms and institutional frameworks to be upscaled. ASEAN can work to strengthen collaboration with established mechanisms like the WHO's pandemic supply chain network. We'll also need to strengthen supply chain and trade finance programs for medium and small-sized enterprises. They're very vulnerable to the disruptions that are occurring, but they're also critical to the supply chain. They're also incredibly important in terms of their impact on the most vulnerable elements of our society. Trade finance programs are tools that we know work and that extend the reach of financing instruments. And so we will also need to continue to invest in tools such as the ADB Trade Supply Program and others. These issues go, as I think my comments illustrate, well beyond financing. And they cross over into political economy. And solutions will also be needed on things like export bans. And there will be efforts needed on rationalization and supply, on trade and supply of key materials. So I think, just to take that very small but critically important sector of medical equipment, I think there's a lot there in terms of understanding, what are the problems, what are the tools that we need to facilitate trade. Now, of course, the second question, how do we increase private investment, is hard to think of a bigger question. And there are maybe I'll give again a narrow response. I think that we all understand the environmental, governance, and contextual factors that promote private investment. What I would simply emphasize here at this moment is that there's always the chicken or egg problem of what comes first, governance reforms or investment. And I think one of the things we're going to need to do in the post-COVID world is continue to push on the reforms, but also to invest in platforms that accelerate that momentum and that allow us to try to push forward in sort of this perhaps almost dialectic way, bringing the private sector into solutions where perhaps the government's reforms aren't complete, but where it can contribute to that. I guess maybe I'll just close by saying that the quality of collaboration and integration amongst different actors in this multi-stakeholder system, development banks, private sector, governments, is going to be even more important to driving the possibility of increased amounts of private capital investment. Thank you.
Okay, Duke, I wonder if you want to say a brief remark on that. Thank you.
Sure, I'll try to be brief. On the incentivizations that governments can provide towards private capital, given that emerging markets going forward will actually suffer from liquidity issues, also with the stimulus packages that have been introduced, I think the competition towards foreign direct investment actually will get fiercer. And because of that, I think it's quite tempting for countries to adopt more of a sort of a beggar thy neighbor approach and engage in sort of competing legislations to attract more private sector, and especially as global value chains shift after the pandemic. But what we would advise is to collectively signal towards the outside investors on the region's readiness to be open and also use this as an opportunity, as previous panelists have also all emphasized, that this can really be a moment for a reset for ASEAN, and also a moment for signaling towards investors that the region is willing to work together and also fundamentally address some of the systemic vulnerabilities that it once had. So I think that would probably be the strongest signaling outside. Just briefly on the role of private financing, I just want to also reiterate that since even before the pandemic, but also more so afterwards, we are actually seeing quite a seismic shift in terms of corporates and investors wanting to also invest in areas where there is stronger ESG, environment, sustainability, and governance measures embedded, and also adding to Ahmed's earlier points on the chicken and egg question between governance and investment. I would say that at least here we are seeing a very large portion of private and institutional investors willing to invest and also see how ASEAN as a region can more embrace ESG measures. And I think that would be one very strong attracting factor for private capital going forward, and especially as the region wants to build back better, utilizing blended finance methods from both public sector and private sector.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we now come to the end of this webinar. I apologize for exceeding the time. I know it's too late for Mari already, and she's past midnight maybe there. But I just would like to thank all our excellent speakers and discussants for sharing your time and for sharing your thoughts and views on this very important issue on post-pandemic recovery for the region. And just to inform you that we have recorded this a webinar. So for those of you who are interested, or if you can share the links to your friends who are interested to know more about the outcome of this webinar, please do so. I also apologize that we cannot accommodate to reply to a lot of questions, from the audience because of the limited time. But nonetheless, this is a very fruitful exercise, very fruitful opportunity for us to have this meeting. And also just one request, if we can take a family photo of all the speakers together with our SecGen. So how are we going to do it? Maybe if we can just look at the screen and then we can get our Secretary General in there as well. Sorry, let's just wait. Okay, I think we're all, I think Ibo Armida slept, or so I think this is the family photo. So if we can count for what, 1 to 5, I don't know how you take the picture. Is he coming? Sorry, I think Ibo Armida is joining us. If we can wait a bit. Yeah. Okay, great. Yes, I think we have a complete, family. Okay, so if we can count 1 to 5, okay, and look at the screen, please. Okay. 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 All right. Again, thank you so much. Yeah, I think we're done. Again, thank you so much, guys.
Thank
and
you.
have a good day. Bye.
Bye.